Welcome to Voices Beyond the Spectrum. Real stories, brave voices, radiant perspectives. This is the podcast for parents and caregivers of autistic and neurodivergent children and teens. I'm your host, and each week we hold space for honest conversations, shared struggles, and hard-won victories from those who truly live it. You're not alone, your story matters, and it starts here. Welcome, everyone, to Voices Beyond the Spectrum Research Hub Edition. I'm your host, Karla Chinen, and I'm so grateful you're joining us today. I'm excited to introduce our guest, Brooke Wagner, RDI program certified consultant, who has been supporting autistic individuals since 2001, has over 22 years of experience implementing relationship development intervention, and is a founder and owner of Therapeutic Approach to Growth and a private agency that supports autistic individuals of all ages, both in person throughout Southern California and remotely. She is also the host of the podcast Finding Hope on the Spectrum. She's deeply passionate about treating each client with dignity and respect while honoring what matters the most to them and their family values. What she finds most rewarding is helping parents feel empowered, regain hope, and feel excited about taking the lead in their child's growth journey. Brooke, thank you very much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So to start it up, I'd like to learn more about your background and what shaped your work.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, Karla. This is such an honor to share a bit about my passion and work. And I started in the field when I was really fortunate, actually. I started when I was 21 and I was a psych undergrad, and I really wanted to work with children that had behavior challenges. I thought I was going to go into the field of children that were abused, actually. And then a friend of mine was like, "You've got to try this. You're going to love it. There's a job opening for working with kids with autism, and I think you're going to really love it." So I went for it. And I just knew, and within 2 weeks, that this was going to be my career, and was so excited about it and fell in love with it. And that time I was doing ABA. RDI wasn't around, and I really loved doing ABA and just was passionate about working with the families. And what I loved is the families were so supportive of their children and just really wanted to help their children grow and do whatever they could to make that happen. And so fast forward about 3 years later, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a company that brought Dr. Goodstein and Dr. Shealy to San Diego. And at that time, I was a supervisor for another APA company, and we hosted a 2-day conference. And I just fell in love with RDI at that point and just realized that there were some key things I was missing. And once I followed that conference, and they stayed and trained us further on the RDA, which is our assessment. And so I got about 5 days with them. And it was just such a wonderful, enlightening experience. And following that, I remember seeing one of my clients and realizing that I was missing some key things with her prior to this new knowledge. And so at that point, I realized I wasn't going back. I was only going forward, and really was excited to pursue my RDI certification. So ever since then, at that point, I decided to pursue that certification, and somewhere along the way, decided that RDI was really going to be my main focus. And I started TAG and Therapeutic Approach to Growth, and was doing both for a while, ABA and RDI. And I'll never forget having a client that was doing both with me. And I was in one room focusing on compliance and sitting at the table and doing drills. That we were doing a lot of discrete trial at that time. And I know ABA has evolved so much since then. And then the other room, I was meeting with the parents and helping them to learn about their communication style and to slow down and to provide their child with opportunities for growth in a way that set their child up for success and that was meaningful for the child and where the child felt competent. And I just realized there was such a contrast between those two that I needed to just pick one. And I went with the RDI route. And that was the beginning of my RDI journey. And it's been an incredible journey ever since. And it's just been a wonderful thing to be a part of.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I know for many families listening, they might be curious about RDI. So let's explore that a little bit. So for the families that are new to RDI, how would you describe it in simple terms? Or what are the goals of RDI?
Yeah. So relationship development intervention is a developmental model. And so what that means is we go back to birth. And we look at what typically occurs in children's development and also what typically occurs between a parent and child relationship. And so Dr. Gutstein has studied cross culturally what that looks like. And there's some commonalities with how we guide children. And then he looked at what was happening with autism and how when you have a child that's not responding to your interactions or maybe avoiding, that it can be really confusing on how to support that child. And this may be happening from some of our families that have a diagnosis, maybe at 1 or 2, but they can look back and realize that there were some things that were some red flags. And so what we're trying to do with RDI is focus on setting the parents up for success so the parents can feel competent in guiding their child through opportunities for growth. And it's very individualized. Every family is going to be different in terms of the support that they need and what their child needs, and based on their child's abilities and challenges, and also based on where the family's at. Many of our families are in crisis, and we have to help them through that so they can work on these areas. So we really customize it for each family. But in terms of the core kind of areas that we focus on in RDI, when we're looking at the child, we really want, over more than anything else, we want to focus on well-being and having a high quality of life. We want our kids to feel successful, to thrive, to feel valued, to feel like their opinion matters, to feel like they have agency over their life, that they can handle when things don't go as planned. And so to work on that, we have to work on the things you need to be successful in those areas. So some of the areas that we work on are things like dynamic intelligence. So being able to manage life, because it's messy, very messy. Life is unpredictable. And in particular, social interactions are. And so being able to problem solve, make adjustments, make decisions, and then reflect on them, those are all things related to dynamic intelligence. We also work on strengthening the guiding relationship. We want that guiding relationship to be first between the parent and child, and so that the parent is the expert of their child. And they already are. They already have this innate ability, right? We know this. We want that to come alive wherever they are in that journey. We want the family to feel like they are the ones that are going to make these changes because they are capable, they understand their child, they know them best, and they also have that parental instinct that's so powerful. And so we want our families to get to a place where they are so knowledgeable of how to support their child through these challenges and to set them up for guiding opportunities for growth, that they can then support professionals and they can support the teachers, and they can be a team member that can provide real insight and support to help their child then be successful with other relationships.
Okay. And how does RDI differ from other intervention models?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, one of the main things is that depending on the model, right? Some models do focus more on parent guidance, but RDI, one of the biggest pieces that RDI focuses on is a consultation model. So we are consultants working directly with the parents. And so the parents are the ones that are implementing the assignments that we give them, and they videotape them, they reflect on them. Maybe they're reflecting on just through journaling and not through video, but ideally they can see a video sample, we can review it together, they can review it as well, and they can take the time to reflect. So I would say that is a big difference, as many traditional models out there focus on a professional working directly with the child. We take a different approach. And one of the beautiful things about taking that approach is, in addition to the parent feeling empowered, also provides the child with more opportunities for growth, because they learn how to make it a way of life, and they learn how to implement it during spontaneous moments in addition to carefully planned out activities. And so it just gives them more repetition, which the brain needs to really make those neural connections that we're working on.
And then, with that being said, what developmental or communication challenges does RDI support best?
Right. Well, I would say our biggest communication focus in RDI is the focus on experience sharing communication. We use declarative communication to do so. Declarative communication provides opportunities for the child to have to think and to problem solve and to grow through their own brain doing the thinking. We know that the brain is an experience-dependent organ, so the brain has to think through these opportunities. So we use indirect cues, and we use things like comments, things like sharing opinions, sharing ideas, sharing observations to help the child be able to see our perspective in a non demanding environment. And also just to connect on an emotional level, because once you get that engagement and that connection, it just builds a fire. That fire is going to grow because it feels good. Our human needs, it meets our human need to connect on an emotional level
Yeah.
instead of demands and questions and those kinds of things. So that's a big area that we focus on that really sets our clients up for success and helps them with regulation as well.
Yeah, definitely. I have seen with Adrian, certain intervention approaches and models tend to be a little bit more rigid, which
Mhm.
now him entering stage of teenage years and wanting more autonomy of choice of things that he wants to do around his environment, you get a little bit of that pushback and quote unquote behaviors start
Yeah,
rising due to that because obviously there's also limited communication there at
right.
times, which, they have to get their point across some way, somehow. But
Right.
being said, are there any common misconceptions in regards to RDI?
I would say over the years, we've heard things like RDI is just for individuals that are, that have less challenges and have, maybe the old term of Asperger's type. That's what people used to say. And sometimes people misunderstand that it can be for any level, it can be for any ability level, any age as well. Sometimes people say it's for younger kids. They don't realize that we have many adults that are highly successful in an RDI program. We have adults that choose to sign themselves up for RDI and, are verbal and, again, all levels. And also we have families or individuals that might think, oh, well, these kids that have more behavioral challenges that are more impacted, they need ABA, they need behavioral supports first. And it's not necessarily the case. Everybody's different in what's going to set them up for success and what they need in their journey. It's not that RDI is for everybody. It's just that it really is such an individualized approach that it can address any ability level and any age level. It comes down to more of, is it right for the family? Is it something that resonates with the family that the parents want to take on? Or if it's an adult, maybe it's a sibling that's involved, whoever's in that role. It can be really dependent more on the desires and what's of value to the family system.
That makes sense. And honestly, that brings a lot of clarity, and thank you for that. Now I'd like to shift into the heart of your work and the connections you've made with your families. So what does that look like when you first meet a family who is, let's say, overwhelmed with their current situation?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, the program is so individualized for that family. And so it depends on why they're overwhelmed, and we have to address that. It could be that they're overwhelmed because they are not taking care of themselves as parents and they are in crisis and they're so depleted, they don't have anything else to really give to slow down and really reflect, which is required in the program. And so we have to focus on their own self-care needs and help them. That's hard for families. Sometimes families have a very hard time prioritizing themselves because they're so worried about their children. And I understand that. And so it really is individualized based on what the reason is for the overwhelm. It could be a sibling challenge that the siblings are struggling and we need to help that sibling feel more successful, and doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to be the ones providing that. We may help them kind of come up with a plan to help the sibling. Maybe other professionals need to be involved. It could be that the child needs some help biomedically, and we talk about, what's actually going on for the family, and do they need to seek out other things that would support them. So it really does come down to supporting what is actually going on for them. But I would say that when we start to change communication styles and when we start to focus on regulation and when we start to slow down and really focus on engagement and emotional connections, we start to see some of that overwhelm reduce because it starts to feel good for everybody involved. And that starts to give them hope and starts to give them some motivation to keep going.
So you kind of tagged into the next couple of questions I was going to ask. Like, what breakthroughs have you seen that are the most meaningful for you, as well as what changes do you commonly see in families over time?
Well, the breakthroughs I would say that are most meaningful are, you know, many things. A couple of them are when a family, again, looking at well being, right? What do we want as parents with our children? We want our children to say, I love you. We want our children to want to be with us. So having breakthroughs where the child is initiating affection, being able to dance together with their parent and emotionally connect because it just feels good. These are simple things that are huge things for all parents to have the right to experience. So I would say those breakthroughs are always so meaningful and heartwarming. And also when we help parents understand even just like simple things like boundaries, a lot of times parents will not realize that a simple boundary needs to be set. I can give you an example. I had a client that had the son and grandson was having a hard time with the family members speaking, and they really were quiet all the time. They did not talk to each other in front of him at all times. So they would go to a restaurant and they would not talk to each other. They would just sit quietly and eat. And in the car, they wouldn't talk to each other. And so we had to work on setting a boundary and explaining it to him. Why do we want to talk to each other? We want to connect. It feels good for us to chat with each other. And we're not going to force you to be here next to us, but we also have this need that we need to meet as well as a family. And so if you need to take a little break from us talking, you can go in your room, you can have some quality time, quiet time somewhere else. But right now we're going to practice just like we're going to talk together. And in addition, they were talking about him in front of him. And that's also really common. I see, where they're just worried and they're talking about the challenges because they're concerned. And that was creating anxiety for him, is our hypothesis at least. So they stopped doing that and they started setting boundaries. And sure enough, within a few weeks, they could talk to each other. And he was, more regulated and tolerating it. And to the point now where he's contributing to the conversation. So that's a quality of life marker, that's a huge, and not just for the child, it's for the whole family. They all deserve that. So
Yeah, I've seen that it's been very common with a lot of families that I work with as well, what you mentioned. Sometimes if a child is pre-verbal or partially verbal, competence is not assumed. And they hear everything. They feel everything. And that's one of the big key points that I always let them know, because sometimes I've been in a room where they're talking about the child and then I stop them and say, I'll talk to you about it a little bit later.
mhm,
Let's talk about something else. And I redirect the conversation to something else. And later when we're by ourselves, I explain the reason as to why I did that. And
mhm,
and we've seen it even with our child, the schools were very keen when we would pick him up for the staff to let me know how his day went in front of him, like he wasn't present, and bring up,
right.
quote unquote, the B word behaviors, all the behaviors that Adrian was going through for the day. And
Mhm,
I had to stop them. Now they just say from 1 to 10, he was a 10 or he was a 1, depending on what kind of day he had. And that's as good as it gets. And then I read the notes or an email they send me with details as to what occurred, what instances occurred in school. And that
right.
has changed a lot. His approach on how he relates to those aides that are with him and things like that. So I completely agree with you
100%.
on that. So I mean, it's incredible to hear the family and the growth that your families go through this program. Can you
Mhm,
talk a little bit more about your actual organization, like the different services you offer, as well as
mhm.
the unique approach you have with your organization?
Sure. Yeah. So at Therapeutic Approach to Growth, otherwise known as TAG, we offer the RDI program. We have about 10 RDI consultants, I believe, on staff right now. So we have a wide variety of consultants that all meet with the parents, as I mentioned earlier. We do model for the families if needed. So sometimes the families will want an in-person session, and that's completely fine. And of course, during the assessment process, we work with the child, one session with the parent and child participating in activities. And then we videotape that and reflect on it. And then the second session is with us and the child, where we're testing hypotheses, thinking about what's going to set that child up for success with the developmental goal areas we have in mind for them. And then we can translate that information over to the parents and help them learn how to provide that right level of support. And so we have the RDI program, and we support families in the Southern California area, but also outside of the area. We have families outside of state as well, because it can be done remotely. That's another great thing about it, is that anybody can access the support as long as they speak the language of the consultant. And we happen to have a variety of consultants who speak different languages. So that is our RDI program. And then we also provide naturalistic ABA. And so for families that really need more of that one-on-one support, or maybe they can't get funding for RDI, there's kind of a variety of reasons why they would choose the naturalistic ABA, because that we do have insurance funding for that. And I should mention our RDI programs do receive funding in the state of California. So, but with our naturalistic ABA programs, those are mostly in the home. There's a supervisor and a one-on-one, and they work on goals. We really try to follow a similar model in terms of we don't provide any discrete trial training. We're providing more naturalistic, play-based therapy, and again, that's for families that might need extra help. They're not ready yet to just take it all on themselves, and so we wanted to make sure to offer a program that was still like-minded for them. And then we support adults as well. So we have some adults in our RDI program, but we also are offering a adult group program. And it's more of a social opportunity to get together and to provide just friendship and connection in meaningful locations in the community. So that's kind of a newer model that we've been working on and are excited to get out there.
Let's talk about your podcast, Finding Hope on the Spectrum and reaching, a wider audience. So, what inspired you to start the podcast and what has been the most rewarding part?
So the podcast came from many years of talking to families. I used to be in the role of talking to all the prospective clients that would call in and want information about RDI and in our naturalistic ABA program. At most families would say, "Why have I not heard about this before? Why was this not recommended?" And, they are frustrated at many of them, feeling like they would have done this, a lot sooner had they known. Or they're sad. It provides a lot of different emotions to feel like there was something out there that really resonates with them, particular RDI, because most people get diagnosed in their recommended ABA, and so it's just one thing. There's so many things out there that are fantastic at supporting kids with autism or individuals that people don't know about. And so the podcast was born to provide information that's meaningful, that's developmentally focused, or at least a program that I feel is complementary to my philosophy. I also just love learning, and it just provided me with an opportunity to connect with people that I may not normally connect with or may not be able to. Because of the platform, people are open and excited to chat about what they're doing, and so it's been an incredible learning opportunity for me, which I've then brought back to my team and my clients, and I've been able to apply some of the things that I've learned through the process. So that was the original reason. And I really wanted it to be hope filled. That's why I called it Finding Hope on the Spectrum. I really wanted to bring hope to the community that, yes, there are challenges, but there's just so many things that can be done, and it can be an amazing journey. It can be hard, but it also can be beautiful. And I really wanted to share the insights of all these incredible professionals with the community.
Thank you very much. Just for everyone listening, I will go ahead and post the link to your organization as well as to the podcast. If you guys want to check it out, I would really definitely support it. And I've listened to a lot of your podcast episodes. They're amazing. They're very thorough, very informative. So I really recommend it. Um, and then as far as, to wrap up our conversation, I I left if you could give the families practical tools or resources that they could use. One simple connection based activity that a family can try. Let's say today, if they're having challenges in that regards with their children, or how can families connect with you and your team as well if you want to provide that information. And if you have
Mhm.
any upcoming projects or episodes that you're excited to share.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think that in terms of an activity, I mean, it is holiday season. So I love bringing in holidays because everybody loves holidays. Whatever holiday you celebrate, I think it's always a fun one to think about different things that you can that are tied to the holidays. But If in terms of a simple activity that is usually one that everybody loves, is even just something like a balloon toss. Being able to just toss a balloon back and forth. It's dynamic, it's unpredictable, but it's usually can be manageable for kids that maybe have motor challenges, because the balloon is not fast moving. And so you can provide sharing, opportunities and comment about it and just focus on having a good time. And it was funny because my two daughters are 12 and 14. They were just playing with a balloon with their friend's house for hours. And, just everybody loves tossing a balloon back and forth. It just creates a really fun, unpredictable, but also safe environment. So I think the biggest thing for families is just to enjoy your kids, to take the pressure off for the child to have to perform a certain way or to show a certain skill and just be present. Your child will feel it. They will feel the invitation, they'll feel the desire to connect, and that really starts that guiding relationship. So I think I would say for more than anything else, just really comes down to your intention and your desire just to slow down and connect. Maybe read a story together. Maybe you're tossing a balloon back and forth. Maybe you're making a simple ornament for the Christmas tree, or maybe you're hanging Christmas trees. You're just slowing down and being present and enjoying your child in that moment. So, and in terms of how families can find was that your second
Yeah.
question?
How can they connect with you and your team?
Sure, sure. So they can go right to our website. It's www.tag4 growth, growth.com. And we do offer a complimentary in-service or presentation for any families that are interested in RDI. That presentation is live, so you can ask questions, you can see video samples of another family's RDI videos, and we kind of walk you through a typical path for the program. So that's a great way to learn about RDI if you'd like to learn more. And of course, I also have several episodes on the podcast where I bring Gail Ludwig on, who's my director for RDI at TAG, and we talk about different topics. And I'm sure we'll continue to do that just to provide those resources for the community. So that's another great way to get that information out there. I am also really excited. I have been working behind the scenes too on some online courses. And so those are going to be released in the new year. And so I'm very excited. I think I wanted to create these courses for families that want RDI or want more of a developmental model, but can't get funding and need something that is a lower price point, but still are able to learn and to grow and to have that knowledge. So for families that can't access a one-on-one consultation model for whatever reason, these types of courses are going to be helpful to provide the insight and the knowledge. And so I'm going to be starting with a communication focused approach, but my goal and my plan is to continue to build it out and to provide opportunities to learn more in a transformational way, more of the RDI components, but other things too that I've learned along the way as a consultant all these years of things that have been helpful for families. And in addition to my training in RDI. So it's not going to just be RDI. It'll be other things too that I found to be helpful. And there'll also be opportunities for questions and answers. It won't just be recording. There'll be some recording, but also opportunities for parents to really ask those questions.
That's amazing. I know I'm personally interested, to go this route. And like you mentioned, it is an approach and it is a process to get approved. But if any families are interested, send me an email and I can guide you through that process. I'll be happy to do that for you. But yeah, this is an amazing approach and I think it's going to give a lot of autonomy to our children that sometimes it's taken away with other approaches that are taken out there. And I do I've seen it happen with older individuals that were under certain type of therapy that now they have a trouble speaking for themselves, having that voice for themselves, and sometimes are end up being emotionally even abused, because they don't know how to say no or how to make sure people respect their no's. So this is an amazing approach to really give the voice back to the individual and to give them that autonomy to make their own choices and also to help the families in the process. Because I'm a huge
Yep.
advocate of sharing how the diagnosis doesn't only apply to that one individual, but it's the whole family. And I have
Yes.
seen it, with my son. When we're regulated, my husband and I, he's regulated. When he's with staff that's regulated at school, he's regulated. So I think it all comes back to how do we do this as a community and as a team to make sure that that individual really flourishes as an individual.
Mhm.
So finally, would you like to end with a message of hope for our
Oh,
family
sure.
or something to encourage our families that are starting the journey, are in the middle of the journey, or are towards the end of the journey?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that more than anything, that I encourage families just to keep going, to keep seeking, to listen to their gut, to know that they have that parental instinct, which was a gift they were given, to trust it and to understand that even though today may be a hard day, maybe there's a challenge that a family is experiencing that they feel like it's not something that they can overcome, they will overcome it. The children are so incredibly resilient and capable. And with the right support, with setting them up for success, they can thrive and they can be competent. And so I would say just, keep going, keep taking care of yourself and know that this too shall pass and you will be on the other end of it. But it does take that resilience and that tenacity. And I would have to say the families that I work with are the strongest, most incredibly inspirational families with what they overcome and what they achieve and what they get to celebrate on the other end. It's just incredible.
That's beautiful. Brooke, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom, your compassion to all our listeners. And thank you very much for being here with Voices Beyond the Spectrum, the Resource Hub edition. I will add Brooke's link to the website as well as her podcast link so you could also listen to that. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today on Voices Beyond the Spectrum Resource Hub Edition. A heartfelt thank you to our guest, Brooke Wagner, RDI Program Certified Consultant, founder of Therapeutic Approach to Growth, and the host of Finding Hope on the Spectrum. We're so grateful for your wisdom and hope you shared with our community. Today's music was brought to you by Brad Kalu and the beautiful piano collaboration by Sophia Chinen and Brad Kalu. You can find this episode and all upcoming releases on every major podcast platform and through Empathy for Autism California. I'm your host, Karla Chinen, and thank you for listening. We'll see you in our next episode. Have a great one.